sense about how you should actualize that potential. You should make the most of that potential. Don't waste your opportunity for a brighter future. I want to first of all tell you that gender discrimination is a reality. In other words, when we talk about gender discrimination, I'm talking to children now, talking to girls. There are differences in opportunities between boys and girls. It is better now than it was 1 or 2 generations ago. You have more of a level playing field with the boys than they did maybe when we were younger. But nevertheless, gender discrimination is a reality. And I want to explain that to you with 3 little stories. The first story is about during the colonial era, before 1960, in Ghana, there was a scientist from maybe Britain or someplace who came. He was looking into how they could improve upon agriculture. And so he went out into the fields with a couple of Ghanaians, and when he was out there, he said, "Did you see that?" And the Ghanaians did not see anything unusual, so they said, "See what?" He said, "There are women working in the fields. Did you see that? There are women who are working in the fields." And the Ghanaians said, "Yeah, I mean, that's normal, that's natural." But the idea that they had, the textbooks, everything that they'd been taught, was that women are just housewives. They don't do anything more than take care of the children and cook and take care of the house. It is the men who are the breadwinners. It is the men who are the workers. They are the ones who take care of everything else. They are the ones who are economically active. You see, for a very long time, the role that women have always played traditionally was neglected or ignored. Nobody really took it as being anything important. It is now that we recognize that males and females are both economically active, and even in your home, you will know that your mothers take care of a lot of the responsibilities in the home. So that was one area in which there was gender discrimination, because since they felt that the women were not doing anything, then they didn't need education, they didn't need opportunities, they didn't need equipment, they didn't need training. And that was a fallacy. And that was one of the things that held the women back, because the men were getting all the opportunities. The second story I want to tell you is that one time I was going to, I think, Benue State. And when I got off the plane at Makurdi, there was a driver that was waiting for me, a driver from the Ministry of Agriculture, because I was going there to do some research for them. And the poor man was told that he should go and take Dr. OLAWOYE, that time I was not yet a professor, from the airport. And so the man went there, and he had because he didn't know who he was picking up, he put Dr. OLAWOYE on a piece of paper, and he was standing there. And so when I saw him, I went up to him and I said, "Good morning." And he said, "Ahem." And I said, "You're looking for Dr. OLAWOYE?" He said, "Yes, I'm Dr. OLAWOYE." And he looked at me and he said, "Really?" And I said, "Do you want to see my identification?" The poor man thought that when he saw doctor, that's definitely a man. Because women aren't doctors, right? And then he saw OLAWOYE, and of course that's not the woman. So he thought he was looking for a black man, and when the white woman came up, he was a little bit surprised. However, I convinced him that I was, and he took me to where I was going. The third little story I want to tell you is that I have been at the University of Ibadan since 1978. This month makes 37 years that I have taught in the university. Some of my students are now professors. In fact, I was at an occasion the other day, and one of my former students, was introducing one of his former students. His former student is now a professor, which made me a professor of a professor of a professor. And so, I decided that I have been there too long. But when I was head of department for about 6 years, and in the year 2004, I put in for Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture and Forestry at the University of Ibadan. Before me, there had been 19 deans, all of them male. Since I left the deanship in 2006, there have been another maybe 4 deans, all male. In other words, there have been about 25 deans of that faculty. I'm the only female that has been there. Now, when I put in that I was, going to be elected, the first time I put in actually was 2002. And there were 2 other people that were running with me. And I won't say I lost, but I came first from the rear, right? You understand me? I was 3rd out of 3, which means from the back I was first, right? Now, what I want you to understand is that, at that point I was about to say that, okay, but you told me. But because I believed I could get there, and I believed that by the grace of God, I could do well. 2 years later, I put in. And by that time, some of my male colleagues had started thinking that, well, maybe a woman could do it. Maybe we should give Janice an opportunity to see what she can do. But do you know there were some of my male senior colleagues who went around, I heard later, who went around saying, you people, you have no shame. A woman to head the Faculty of Agriculture in the University of Ibadan? Abomination. She's not even really an agric person. She's a rural sociologist. And she's right. And I'll tell you, there was a day that I went for, I became the dean, and indeed those people who were criticizing me ended up commending me at the end of 2 years. But I went to one meeting of the Association of Deans of Agriculture in Nigerian Universities. All men. They were from all the universities that have faculties of agriculture in Nigeria. And so I came in the same car with the president. It was in Bauchi State. And we had driven from Abuja. I had flown to Abuja. He had met me there, and we drove to Bauchi. And so when he got out, they all knew him, but it was the first time that they were meeting me. And so many of them were looking at me, and they were greeting the president very well. I was a treasurer, actually, but they didn't know me yet. I had inherited the purse, so to speak, from my predecessor. And so they were all looking at me and they said, how are you? How are you? Because I came in the car of another man, so they were thinking I was either his wife or something. So after a while, I was just standing there watching all of this scenario. And he finally introduced me that this is Professor OLAWOYE. She's the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture and Forestry of the University of Ibadan, where most of them had gotten their degrees. And so I told them that, look, you boys, if you don't treat me well, I'm going to tell them to retract your certificate. Please no, please no. By the time I left, the next time my successor in office, by the time we went to the next meeting of the association, they were all saying, what of Madame? We wish she was still here. But before, they were thinking I was either a wife or a mistress. Gender discrimination is real. You may face some challenges because you are a female. But that does not mean that you should say that I'm only a woman. I can't do it, it's only for the men. No. Don't allow, like Esther said, don't allow your gender to stop you, to prevent you from actualizing your dream. Now, let's go on. I spent a bit of time so that you will get to know me, I will get to know you, you will relax a little bit, and we will now get into the stuff that's a little harder. So what do these stories tell us? They tell us that women were once considered to be out of place when they tried to compete in a man's world. That's what it used to be. They used to say the woman's place is in the kitchen. Now understand, we've talked about work-life balance. The fact that I'm a professor does not mean that I neglected my husband or my children or my kitchen. It means you have to work harder. When you look at me, you think that, what does she know? She's white. I'm married to a Nigerian. We have been married for now 43 years. Happily married. We have 4 successful sons. I did not become a professor by neglecting my home. We were always having so many people living with us. Sometimes I felt like I was running a boarding school in my own house. I did not neglect that, because now I'm enjoying it. I tell you now, the professorship does not mean nearly as much to me as my successful children and the relationship that I have with my husband. So you can have both, but you must learn to balance. Do not neglect your home because you want a career. Do not neglect your career because you want a home. To keep your home. You can have both. You need a little bit of divine intervention too. You need a little help from God in order to do that. Understand the stereotype is changing, and the role that women can and do perform at the highest levels of the economy, industry, academia, and governance is being recognized, and opportunities are being opened for females to fully participate at all levels of the society. In any area that you want to go into, you can become the CEO, you can become anything. Opportunities are opening up for women. You were born at a good time. Congratulate yourself and say, I was born at a good time. We have come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. Pioneering women professionals faced many obstacles as they competed in a man's world. I use the example of Professor OLAWOYE, with whom I hope you've heard of. Maybe you're a bit young. She's one of the first professors female professors in Nigeria. She is my mentor. She's now 82, I think. And I still go to her and I sit down and we talk like mother and daughter. You need a mentor. You need somebody you can look up to. You need a role model, but choose carefully. All right? You need someone who can tell you where she's been and how she got to where she is, so that you know your own journey may be different, but you will have the encouragement that somebody else has passed along this route before. And she can provide encouragement. Professor OLAWOYE, when I was just a small lecturer and I was sitting in the corner hoping nobody would see me, she would call me and she'd say, Janice, there's a workshop coming up at the Institute of African Studies. You must prepare a paper. And I would say, oh, why is this woman always troubling me? Why didn't she just leave me alone? But because I didn't want to disappoint her, I would make sure a paper was ready. And I would say, what do I know about this topic? But I would research and I would look into it and I would make sure that the paper was something I was proud of. And later she would say, that was a good paper, and I would feel so good. And that's the same kind of thing that I try to do to other people who are coming up, especially other females that are coming up, even males. All of my students try to ensure that, look, you can make it, you can go. There is a difference between gender and sex. Understand that when we talk about sex, we're talking about the biological differences. And those are the same. You know, there are physiological differences between males and females, that whether you're American or you're Nigerian or you're European or whatever you are, those are the same. That's not what we're talking about. But those sexual differences also have some effects upon your path in life, the road you will take. Because men will not nurse babies. Men will not be pregnant unless God does something really, really strange. So they don't have some of the kinds of challenges that we have as women. I would say they don't have some of the wonderful opportunities that we have as women. Don't look at it as a burden, look at it as a privilege. Sorry guys, you'll never be pregnant, you'll never know what it's
Okay, we won't take it personal.
You may think that you're lucky, but I tell you, it's a disadvantage, sorry. But when we talk about gender, it is very different. Gender is what the society says is appropriate for males and females. And so they may say that it is good for boys to do something, it is not good for women to do it. Do you understand? But every society decides what is appropriate for males and females in that society. So what you can do as an American youth, you may not be able to do as a Nigerian youth. So that differs from one place to another. It differs by ethnic group, it differs by religion. I made a mistake one time, I never repeated it. I have traveled all over this country and all over Ghana, over much of Africa actually, in the years I was doing research. And I was in the northern, I think in Kano State. And you know, I was with a group of men. There was a group of us doing some research, and usually I'd be the only woman. There'd be like 5, 6 men. There'll be the agronomist, there'll be the engineer, there'll be the, you know, all these guys, and then me. And so, you know, we were greeting the people in the Kano State government. And, you know, the guys were going up and shaking hands. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And I went up and I put out my hand and the guy said, hey. And I felt like somebody with leprosy. Because I forgot. And as a sociologist, that's almost unforgivable. But I forgot where I was. And I forgot that women cannot shake hands with anybody that isn't either their brother or their father or their husband, you know. And yet the next man held out his hand to shake hands with me, all right? Because he had a little different orientation. So you have to be sensitive to what the society said. But at the same time, don't let that pull you back. Don't confront. You know, culture is important. Culture is important. And there are many things about African culture that I like very much. And that my husband and I have put into our children. Some of you, your parents don't want you to speak Yoruba. They'll be speaking English to you. We have a boy right now in our school. He just came from England. His mother is Yoruba, his father is Yoruba. The boy cannot understand ekaro, nothing. So he's just coming from Britain. He just came to join us about 2 weeks ago, and you know, he was having a bit of a problem adjusting. So I called him and I talked to him, and he said, well, you know, some of these boys, they will be speaking their language. I said, which language? You know, it's their language. I said, it's their language, it's also your language. It's just that you don't know it. So what you do is do like me. Learn it. Don't let them know that you know. And so when they abuse you very well in Europe, you can turn around and say, Eshe, where'd you go? But by the time you come home and you are with your mom and dad and you will say, Eka Aroma, Eka Rosa, they will fall down you. They will be so happy. Culture is something that gives us part of our identity. My children are all grown up. The oldest one is 42 years old now. When he sees his father, it's still Ekarosa. When he sees him in Chicago in the airport, it's Ekarosa. Your culture is important. Don't throw it away. But there are some things about culture that you need to question. There are some harmful traditional practices that you need to question. You need to say that I am not going to accept that. I'm going to accept the good part. I'm going to accept the respect for elders. I'm going to respect the language. I'm going to respect things that are good about our culture. But culture is not going to limit me. It's not going to hold me back. I'm going to actualize my full potential. So what is acceptable for males and females in terms of what we do, what we dress, what we say, is socially determined. All right? Sex and gender are not the same. Gender is the socially determined, maintained, and enforced roles and behaviors for males and females assigned on the basis of sex. Gender differences are real and they are significant. Now, there is what we call gender socialization. You're not born and that day you know what is acceptable for boys and girls to do. All right? You learn. Like everything else, we learn our socially determined differences. And sometimes we find out that, it's just like your mom may say, girls don't behave that way when you're doing the same thing as boys, yeah? You're outside, you're playing rough, and they say, don't you know what it means to be a girl? And if a boy is crying, they say, boys don't cry, all right? That's all part of gender socialization, teaching us those gender roles and responsibilities. And we have done that in Africa to the extent that girls think there's some things they can't do or they shouldn't do. And boys think there are some professions they should not be. Like when a boy wants to be a chef, I would say, you want to go to school to learn how to cook. Or a boy wants to go into nursing and they say, don't you know that's a female profession? Or a girl wants to go into engineering and they say, you want to be an engineer? Don't you know you're a girl? Can't you go into secretarial school or teaching? There's nothing wrong with teaching. But what I'm saying is that when they want to say that there are some professions that girls should not aspire to, they will limit your potential. So there are certain things that even at the household level, we think that men should do or women should do. My husband grew up in a home where there were 5 wives and many children. And so, as far as his father was concerned, once a male child is no longer breastfeeding, they have no right to be in the kitchen. The only reason they can be in the kitchen is if they're with their mother that they have to be breastfed. So my husband never knew how to cook. And he said, because we have 4 sons, he now thought that the same thing should go, as he was trained, so also. So I was teaching our children secretly, because I didn't want them to starve to death by the time they leave home, before they get married. Now, one of my sons is a better cook than his wife. And I said, Raulu, I wish this had happened when you were still in my house, because the kind of thing you're cooking is better than even what I know how to cook. All right? Go on. There are certain occupations perceived to be male or female oriented. Like they think men, I remember when women first started driving, they would look at them as if to say, what kind of woman is this, driving a car? Then when they would talk about driving a bus, a public transport bus, it would make national news. I said, what's the big deal? Blacksmith, bus conductor, palm mine tapper, a carpenter, fisher, fishing, rearing cattle, all those things are considered to be male occupations. Female occupation, housewife, petty trading, nursing, food processing, secretary, sewing, hairdressing, and so on. But when you get even into the university, you will find out that there are some faculties that are predominantly male and some that are predominantly female. But it is changing. I remember when I started teaching in agriculture, you could practically count on 2 hands the number of students that were female that were in the classes for agriculture. Now we have even more females than males. So women are rising up and saying, look, we can do anything. Science, technology is no longer a barrier. Mathematics is not a barrier. You can do it just as what? You've got the same brain. Maybe yours is even a little better than some of your male friends. Gender roles vary and they change. There are variations found across cultural groups and localities. They can change over time, but relatively slowly. Look, it's not overnight. You can change your car or you can change your laptop overnight. But to change some of these social norms is a little bit difficult. It takes some time. So we need to give our parents time. There are certain kinds of obstacles to gender equality: lack of control over decision-making, over capital, and so on. More responsibilities for women without greater returns. In other words, there's more work for women to do without the compensation that goes with it. Physical limitations, poor health, and lack of time. You will find women who are pregnant, carrying a baby, and they're out in the fields, all right? The fact that you are pregnant or you are nursing a baby does not mean that you should have lower responsibilities. Yes, they will give you maternity leave for 3 months. After that, you have to pull your weight. Otherwise, you're in danger of losing your job. Exploitation by other people, inability to take advantage of economic opportunities on your own. There are still laws in this country that if a woman wants to sign certain kinds of documents, her husband or her son, adult son, have to co-sign. There are still some kinds of rules and regulations like that. There are social restrictions to participation. There are gender gaps that do exist. Let me just show you, go to the next one. If you look at this data, if you can see it, in the area of agriculture, hunting, and forestry, you have 86% male, 13% females. But I tell you that females are working, it's just they're not recognized. If you look at, for example, manufacturing, you will find 78% males, 21% or 22% females. When you look at hotel and restaurants, that's where you see 30% females, but they're doing all the kinds of things like cooks, cleaners, and so on. Management jobs are still for men. When you look at something like education, that is where you, or health and social work, that's where you see females. So there are gender gaps. There are still realities of the society thinks certain things are more for men and certain things are more for women. Nevertheless, change is happening and more females are moving into formerly male-dominated disciplines. And this is seen in the changing proportion of females in science and technology areas, and even the proportion of females in universities in recent years. This is a great time for you. I tell you, when my husband was at the University of Ibadan, which was 1969, he graduated. At that time, you know, for every female student, there would be like about probably 7 or 8 male students. Alright? And so they had only 2 halls of residence. Well, it first started out Queen's Hall, and then later Idia Hall. But they had about 5 or 6 maybe, male halls of residence. The biggest problem we have now in terms of student accommodation at the University of Ibadan is what to do with all the females. I recently resigned from being, because I'm on sabbatical, from being the mistress of Queen's Hall. And we were always having problems. And what do we do with the girls? Because there are so many more girls. Proportionately now it's about 50-50 in terms of female and male students. And yet we don't have enough accommodation for the girls. So things are changing. The proportions are changing. Yes. In our quest for gender equality, there are 3 factors that are critical. Number 1, we must use social wisdom when we embark on gender equality. I have always said that confrontation is likely to get even more opposition. And so we need to get equality with wisdom. All right? You don't force people to give you your rights. Usually they will then put their backs up. You know, men, when you start talking about gender equality, empowerment of women, and so on, they get so nervous because they think that we're trying to take over the world. And that's not the point. What we're trying to do is to get more opportunities for women so that they're more economically equipped, so that they also can have better lives and livelihoods and can benefit their own homes and households even more. So another factor that's crucial is institutionalizing mentorship of young professionals. I was coming with Dr. Akibemi this morning, and she was saying that it seems that mentoring is not what it used to be, and indeed it isn't. In professional areas now, we are now trying to institutionalize mentoring. Programs like award. Dr. Akibemi is doing a program which is called Circle. It's another long name. And I've been assigned her supervisor, her mentor. And what we're seeing is more and more programs are trying to get mentorship of young professionals institutionalized because it is no longer happening. Before, you would find professional women who were taking younger colleagues under their wings and helping to bring them up, but it's not happening. And so we need to get back to the point where we help those that are junior to us to climb up the ladder as well, instead of trying to pull the ladder away and not allowing them to come up. And then mainstreaming gender into organizations. I'm not going to go through that, I've already said it. There is the case of award. I have been associated with award, which is African Women in Agricultural Research and Development. I've been with that program for the last 5 years or so. I have mentored now 5 younger colleagues, and I have told our ward I'm not doing again. They should have other people who will be a part of it, because it's very good not only for the mentees but also for the mentors. So we need more and more mentoring, and I just want to appeal to all of us that we take young ones under our care and bring them up, male or female. Yeah. Now, I want to give you 10 practices that will help you to excel. Remember, I'm talking about actualizing your full potential. And this is on the basis of a book that I read, From Good to Great in God's Eyes. It's written by a man called Chip Ingram. You see, I won't say this is my own original ideas, although I added to what he had put down. Because that would be to steal the ideas of somebody else. My children, never plagiarize somebody else's work. Never steal somebody else's work. Always give credit to whom credit is due. And so this book that says From Good to Great, I've used it with my children in our own schools, and they benefited greatly from it. So I want you to look at 10 practices that can help us to go from being good or average to being great in life. And that's my prayer for each and every one of you. You shall be great. In Jesus' name. All right, the first practice is to, let's go, move. Think great thoughts. One philosopher by the name of Ralph Waldo Emerson said, life consists of what a man is thinking about all day. Now, if you think about bad things all day, that's probably what you're going to become. If you think about great things all day, you will be aspiring for something higher. Even the Bible says in Proverbs 23, verse 7, that as he thinks in his heart, so he is. So what we think is what we become. All right? Some of you don't think about anything beyond Facebook. Today I want to tell you to stop looking at Facebook and face your books. There is a time for it. Unfortunately, you're spending too much time with social media. Social media is good, it's great. But you are not going to become great by looking at what somebody else said about you, or by looking at everybody else's pictures. There's a time for that. But some of you, you spend so much of your time. Anyway. Thoughts can affect us positively or negatively. What we think affects what we do. If I say that, when I was your age, I thought I couldn't do math. I didn't like math. Statistics was my biggest enemy in life. All right? And so because I kept saying that I'm not good in math, I kept thinking about it, that math is not my strong point. How am I going to get through math? Because I kept thinking about it, it becomes what we call in sociology self-fulfilling prophecy. I have said I'm not good in math, so I won't try. Therefore, I will not do good in math. Have I not fulfilled my own prophecy? All right? So what we think affects what we do. Great people think great thoughts about God, about themselves, about others, about life, about future, about the past, about challenges. Think great thoughts. I will be great in life. I can do all things. God bless you. I can be somebody. One of our workers, well, he's one of the lower workers. They have 5 children. Now, in his entire extended family, nobody has ever had a degree from the university. At best, one got NCE. All right? Now, one of his sons is in 400 level at the University of Ibadan. That boy has broken out of what was considered to be their family heritage. You can't go higher than maybe school cert or NCE or HNU. But he's almost getting a university degree now. And he's doing well. If he didn't think he could do it, he wouldn't try. Think great big thoughts about yourself. I'm not saying that you should be proud or arrogant. You know, some of you say, I'm so great, I'm so cool, I'm so neat, I'm so beautiful. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that you can think great things about your future. Do we go by one? Okay, all right, let's go. The second one, read great books. We have a big problem in
Africa.
The world today, not only in Nigeria. Nigerians aren't very friendly with books. But now, this generation, everything has to be digital, has to be on either the computer, has to be virtual. It is a wonderful time for you to be able to get more information. I was telling Dr. Akim back when we were coming that, you know, she was saying that she's been on the internet and so on. I say, you people, you are just too fortunate. When I was doing my PhD, when I was studying, when I was even a young lecturer, if you don't have the book, you don't have the information. Now you can Google anything and you can get everything that is out there. All right? But there was something about reading a book, putting a book in your hands and reading what somebody else has put on paper. Great books can broaden your world, can sharpen your mind, can create new interests, can develop your skills, can strengthen your character. Of course, the greatest book of all is the Bible. But aside from that, books that have been written by philosophers, by inventors, they can help you. You don't have to come up with everything. You don't have to create everything. You can come up with things that someone else has read. What can I learn from books? You can find out about ordinary people who do extraordinary things. Abraham Lincoln was the president of the United States in 1860. He was the one who actually signed the abolition of slavery in America. This man tried so many elections. He tried to be state governor, he failed. He tried to be a member of the House of Assembly, he failed. He tried about 4 times, and he failed. And then he ran for the presidency. You know, somebody who had failed at governorship level now became the president. You can learn how ordinary people did not give up. And you can draw inspiration from that. It can take us to places we may never visit. It can give us inspiration that was received by others. Nobody knows everything. But those things that some people know, you can now incorporate into yourself and become a better person because of it. Thirdly, pursue great people. What have we said before? What was the first one? Think great thoughts. The second one? Good, you're listening. Number 3, pursue great people. Let's say that together. Good. You know, we talked about the importance importance of having a role model. We talked about the importance of learning from other people. There are people around that you can learn a great deal about. Who we choose to follow will determine to a large degree who we become. We begin to take on the attributes of people we spend a lot of time with. And this is what we call socialization. So now, you need to think about who has a positive or a negative and unforgettable influence on your life. Is it a teacher? Is it a parent? Is it some auntie that you know? Some person, maybe it's even a religious leader? Who could be a role model? All right? People who connect with great people often eventually rise to greater heights because of that mentorship. And so if we pick somebody who is going to be our role model, who hasn't done anything more than us, how would that lead us to aspire to something higher? All right? Understand, however, that great people are busy people. Great people don't get to be great by sitting down and watching TV all day. So you have to pursue. You have to run after them. Whenever a student tells me that I tried to come to your office but you weren't there, I said, you're not pursuing. If you come once and you don't see me and you gave up, that's not pursuing. Pursuing is going after them. In those early years when I was pursuing Professor Kolanleawe, I would go to her office, she wouldn't be there, I would go back. But when they said she was coming, I would wait. Because I knew how important it was for me to be impacted by her life. The fourth one, go back. The fourth one is what? Dream great dreams. Dream great dreams. Great accomplishments usually begin with the pursuit of great dreams. And dreams can direct the course of one's life. What do you dream to be? Remember the story that we saw of Thelma? She dreamed about how she could make agriculture better so that farmers' productivity would be higher and their lifestyles and their livelihoods would be better. She had a dream. So what she became started with a dream, with an idea. All of us sit down sometimes and we dream about what maybe our future will be. When I was your age, I used to dream about the man I would marry. I used to dream that he would be tall, dark, and handsome. Well, the man is handsome. He was handsome there. He's still handsome. He's 72 years of age, and he is still handsome to me. He's dark, definitely very dark. But he's not too tall. All right? So I had a dream. Now, that dream didn't exactly come to pass the way I thought it would. But at the same time, we have ideas about what our future will be. People who do great things are not necessarily so greatly gifted or talented. They are often ordinary people with extraordinary faith, people with big dreams. You have to be able to say that there must be something I can do in my life that will make me stand out. Some people will say that I want to be president of Nigeria. Other people will be laughing at them. Continue dreaming. Maybe you'll be the first female president of Nigeria. Nobody said amen.
Amen.
You think it's impossible? By the time you've grown up, they may be ready. They may be ready for you. I can be a minister. I can be a CEO of a great company. I will be exporting all over the world. I have offices in Hong Kong and offices in London and offices in Chicago. Have a dream and make it big. Anybody can have a small dream. Well, maybe I'll get married and have some children. Wonderful. It's a good dream. But it's an ordinary dream. But if you can say, I'll get married, have a wonderful marriage, have fantastic children, and I will still have my career, and everything is going to, I'm going to be known internationally, possible. Right? Pray great prayers. Pray great prayers. No matter who, I'm a pastor, so I know how I would want to treat this this were a sermon, but I won't go there. Pray great prayers. Thinking great thoughts and dreaming great dreams are important, but praying great prayers takes us to a higher and a holier level. I told you before that many times we need divine intervention. We need help. We need grace. We can't do it by ourselves. And so when you have the help of God behind you, your dreams and your thoughts will come to pass. Go on. Great prayers are promise-focused. They are not problem-focused. Listen to this. Children, let's say this together. Can you read it with me? Don't tell God. Read it with me now. 1, 2, go. Don't tell God how big the problem is. Tell the problem how big God is. We serve a big God. Alright? You may think the obstacles are in front of you. Don't focus on the obstacles. Focus on God who can remove any obstacle. And that's the end of the sermon. Okay? Take great risks. Life is marked by windows of opportunity that demand a radical step of faith to achieve something great and fulfill purpose in life. Each and every one of you has a purpose for your life. You have a destiny. But you may never get to that destiny until you're ready sometimes to take a big risk. For me to come to Africa was a giant risk. I didn't even know where Nigeria was.